Hey everyone, this is Jake, and today we are quickly going to talk about Yuri, which is one of the newer SSR units just came out, and she is pretty strong units against the counter. She's basically the anti-counter unit DPS. But anyways, let's jump into the video and talk about Yuri. First things first, she has this passive skill where it makes her really strong against the counter units. She does more damage against the counter units, and she takes less damage from counter units. So that makes it really viable within PvP setting, because there's going to be tons of counters when you go through to fight against enemies, and Yuri is pretty much the perfect counter against them. And she's one of the close to OG units that came out if you look at the release schedule of the units, and she is still viable into PvP into a certain level. That should show you already how strong she really is when it comes to fighting against the counter units. Like character like Lazaria, Janus, and those were the two other pretty strong ranger units that came out around that time, and none of them are used now. And unlike those characters, the one thing Yuri is really good at, she might lack some valid hits, but she's really good at melting down a single target. She does a lot of damage, and her attacks are pretty simple. She just throws this flame grenade, or she launches a fire attack with her ultimate skill. So it's very quick burst skills and just able to dish out damage to single targets. The big downside for her is definitely, we'll talk about in the PvP section briefly as well, is that she does all this damage against the counter units and counter units only. She's fighting mechanics or soldier units, her passive skill is pretty much does not exist. That becomes a very big downside, so her usage will be very limited towards to any other units, because you're playing a character missing a passive skill, and that passive skill is where her damage comes from. So it's really hard to use her in any other content where there's no counter units, so be aware of that. And quickly into her gear options, Mace cooldown set is always pretty good, like general options to use, but I think Yuri is more of the character that's specialized in melting specific kind of counter units. For example, target you kind of want to melt with Yuri is most likely going to be a defender, so such as Yubin. So you will probably want to use Shadow Hole gear that stacks up the defender type damage. Then you are able to really melt down those characters fast as possible. Now, when it comes to PB contents, it's really hard to utilize Yuri right now, because Yuri, like I said, does more damage against the counter units, and it's really hard to find a good spot to fight against the counter units. Shadow Hole, there's tons of other characters that you can use over Yuri, so I don't really recommend it. So overall, she's definitely more of a PvP character. So PvP contents, you don't really have to really use her. And lastly, let's talk about Yuri in PvP. In PvP, Yuri is where he's going to shine the most. She's able to do a lot of damage against the counter units and takes less damage. And I have some clips, as you can see in the background so far, that she does tons of damage against the characters like Yubin and some other characters as well. And another good thing about her within PvP is that she's a ranger class, and combined with the Syrian crew, she can really go and start doing damage. It's really important to have a character to match with the operator now in PvP, and Yuri being ranger class is really good, not to mention she's a 3-cost unit. Amount of damage she does for 3-cost units is actually pretty insane. Now, she doesn't do much of this damage against the soldier units, so as you can see here, I don't really use her against the soldier units comp. But whenever there's a Yubin or Esterosa or some of the counters comes out, Yuri will always come out to do pretty good damage against it. And honestly, if the league match comes back with some of the improvements and stuff, she could be pretty good units to snipe down those counter units. So we'll see how she will play out in the future. But as of right now, yeah, she's pretty good ranger units to be used within PvP. But that is pretty much about Yuri. Like I said, she's a very simple character. There's not too much things to talk about her. She is very simple DPS unit. She just does a lot of damage to counter units. She has this execution mechanics with her ultimate. If she hits a target with 30% or lower HP, she's able to just insta-kill it. But the mechanic is just kind of random. It's hard to kind of throw it out and get the perfect timing unless you kind of manual control the ultimate, which not a lot of people will go for. So it's probably better to just kind of forget that exists. If it kind of works, then like, oh cool, it worked, I just insta-kill it. Or if it doesn't work, then you're like, oh whatever kind of thing. That's that kind of deal of the execution, I think. Unlike Amy, I think Amy is definitely more of the better character to trigger the executions. But anyways, that is pretty much it about this video. And thanks for watching, guys. This is Jake. I will see you guys next time.